Welcome, welcome, welcome in, everyone. Welcome to Care Concierge with CarePatrol, where education is the heart of everything that we do. We're happy to have you here today. It's a brisk, cold day. It's been a cold week. I hope you are warm and bundled up and having yourself a good hour of me time or lunchtime or however you choose to spend your time with us. Thank you for being here today. We appreciate all of you for joining. We have a special topic today and a special presenter. I'm happy to welcome again to Care Concierge, to our educational series. And y'all remember that Care Concierge is an educational system that our series that we spend some effort in bringing to you monthly, 6 days a week, Mondays and or Fridays. I probably spend 60 hours or so a month doing this. And I do it in the same spirit that I spend time with our clients and our providers and our referral partners, which is education is the heart of everything that we do. So if we expend our time educating other people about what lies in front of them or what things may be helpful to them in a personal way, or in your cases, maybe a professional way, then we've done what we've been asked to do as servants. We've done the right thing. We've educated and given people the tools to make decisions that will impact their lives. So this is why I say when I introduce our series as Care Concierge with CarePatrol, where education is the heart of everything we do, that's what I mean. And I just wanted to make that clear today. And we appreciate all of you who are here, all of you who've been with us in the past, know how we work, but those who are new may need to know that we are accredited by the Alabama Board of Social Work Examiners. And we are also accredited by the Alabama Board of Nursing Practitioners. And each of these boards, nursing and social work, say that we have the ability to create these contact hours for you and award them to you. And so for nurses who are on the line today, if you complete the evaluation, we'll post your hour on the nursing website, ABN website for you. Social workers, we send an email, certificates to both nurses and social workers and anyone else who's on who does an evaluation, as well as in this case, with Patty's permission, her presentation. So we are accredited, but to be accredited and for these to be for social workers to be live hours, we have to have an evaluation. And for it to be live, we have to have a password protection system for that evaluation. And so our evaluation tool is called SurveyMonkey. There are those of you who may be on the line who aren't seeing the screen. Maybe you're on your phone. So let me read for you the address for our evaluation today, which is password protected. If you're ready, I'll read it now. It's https://www.surveymonkey.com/r/ all uppercase letters, T as in Tom, N as in Nancy, B as in Bill, W as in Wanda, D as in David, Y as in Yvonne, 7. Once again, in case you missed it or are just joining us, I'm going to read for you, which I've also posted in the chat room. I'm going to read for you the evaluation link, which you must complete in order to receive a certificate and a contact hour for today's presentation. The evaluation link, for those of you who are making note, please make note that it is https://www.surveymonkey.com patibladk.com/r/ all uppercase letters TNBWDY7. And thank you, Miss Dean, for posting that for others in the chat room. Remember, y'all, this is password protected, and we don't give the password out until about 12:50. Today, I'm so pleased to be joined by a dear friend and colleague, Patti Bladk, with Bridgeworth Wealth Management. She is going to present to us a topic that's very dear to her because it's very personal for her. Patti, I know in part because she was a client of CarePatrol, and I know the amount of care and effort that Patti placed in caring for both of her parents until they deceased. And I know that the information that she will share will be evidence in that. So those of you who may be having any sort of personal issues with caregiving at the moment, or anyone else, Patti encourages you, and I encourage you, and hope that you will be, feel safe enough to unmute your mics, which you all have the right to do. You can all unmute and add to the conversation and the discussion. It will be much more rich for all of us if you join in. But if you're not comfortable speaking on a call, please use the chat room. If you don't know where the chat room is, or it's not present on your screen, take your cursor, either move it to the bottom or top of your screen. The black bar will pop down. Chat is an icon there. Click on it, and you can use the chat room. And for now, I believe we've covered everything. One last thing, if you will, y'all, please do the evaluation as soon as you can. I know it's Friday, and I know that you already have more than you can get done by 5 or 4 or whenever. But if you can get this done by 8 o'clock tonight, that'd be great. Then I know when I send out certificates in the morning that everyone's completed it who can complete it. And remember, this is password protected. So we're joined today by Patti Bladk, who will teach us all about tips for managing your stress when you are helping your parents manage the end of their lives. So Patti, I'm sorry for going on so long. Please do illuminate us now.
Thank you, Sean. I'm so glad to be here. As we get started today, there we go. I've got a question, and that's how many people took a shower or a bath today? So give a thumbs up. Give me a wave of your hand if you're on video. Yep, I see some hands. All right, so tell me something that you thought about in the shower this morning.
Well, Patti, as we discussed earlier, which this is a visual I don't wish on anyone here, but in the shower, I pray in the morning. Sometimes I actually get down on my knees. So that's my shower time.
All right, so you're praying. That's awesome. That's a great way to start the day. I know I'm thinking about what's on my to-do list. You know, what else has to get done today? Anybody else want to share what they think
There's
about?
a lot of people in the chat room, Patti, that what I had to do for work, what work needs to be done, what needs to be bought for Thanksgiving dinner.
Yes.
And Ms. Davis says she's hoping she doesn't fall in the shower.
Yes. Well, those are all great things. I can relate to the person who said they were thinking about what do I need to buy for Thanksgiving? That is on my list for this weekend, is to figure that out and get to the store. Well, you may be wondering why I'm from Bridgeworth Wealth Management and I'm asking about your bathing routines. And I'm going to hold you in suspense for a little while longer. And we're going to come back to this and talk about why it's important. So as Sean said, my name is Patti Bladk, and I'm a certified financial planner with Bridgeworth. I'm also a wife and a mom, and I helped take care of my mom and dad before they died. So the information I'm going to share today about steps you can take to help your parents age with dignity while reducing your stress come out of my experience caring for my own parents before they died, as well as working with clients for more than 20 years. I've learned a lot. Some of the lessons were mistakes that I made along the way that I'd love to prevent others from making. And then there were some things that worked out really well that I'd love to share with others. I'm going to read this quote out loud while you read along with me. It says, "There's no playbook to go by as the roles reverse and the generation ahead of us starts to depend on us and slowly slip away. What nobody tells us when our kids are young is how there comes a day when we realize we are the adults. We are the grown-ups making hard calls. We are the leaders called to be wise and strong. We are the ones getting stretched too thin as multiple generations depend on us and the demands for our time and energy amplify and multiply." This quote is from a Birmingham area author named Carrie Campakis. Carrie's written a lot about moms and daughters, and this quote that I pulled came from an article that she wrote titled "The Challenge of Our 40s is Learning to Be the Adult." I wish I had the aging parents version of what to expect when you're expecting to share with you today. I don't have that book yet. That may be coming down the road, but what I do have to share are 10 steps that you can take to help your parents age with dignity and reduce stress for you in the process. I want you to think back. Hopefully you can see this. This is a high school annual. Does anybody remember what they thought was important back in high school? And think about what you know is important now. Have there been any changes for anybody about since the time you left high school?
I never got a motorcycle.
I'm sorry, Sean, you never what?
Got a motorcycle. That's what I thought was important when I was in high school.
Yes.
Having a motorcycle.
Yes, that was important. What about now? You think it's still important?
No, now I think I don't think I would be alive if I had a motorcycle. It's not, it's out of the question.
Yes, yes. So your view changed or your perspective changed. And that's what step one is about. Step one is acknowledging that you have a different perspective than your parent. Your parent is at a different stage of life, and it's a stage of life that we have not lived through yet. So just like, if any of the other people that are on this call have children, there are things that we as parents know that our children don't. Well, that continues. Your parents are at a different stage of life, one that we've not lived at before. And so they've got a different viewpoint on what's important. So they may be thinking things like, I don't want to be a burden on you. I don't want to talk about these things because I know how busy you are and you've already got too much going on. So that may be your parents' perspective. And it's so important to keep that in mind because you may need to be the one to initiate the conversations. You may need to be the one who helps them in getting things done, rather than waiting on them to take the lead. So it's just really important to remember that just like you probably have a different perspective now than you did in high school, your parents also have a different perspective. And you want to let them know that as you have these conversations with them, that you're working with them. It's not you against them, but you are working with them to meet the needs that they have. So you want to enter the conversations with gentleness. And you also, as I said, want to take the lead on having the conversations and getting the information. There's a book that I read years ago called How to Say It to Seniors. And it pointed out that in the middle of life, many of us are all about checking off the things on our to-do list, getting things done. But toward the end of life, it's more about reflection. It's more about looking back. So your aging parents may not be at a place where they can get things done anymore. You may need to be the one who takes the lead in getting things done. So step one is to remember that your parents have a different perspective than you, and for you to take the lead in initiating these conversations.
So Patty, I'm curious because you've done this.
Yeah.
How did you initiate? How did you initiate those conversations?
Yeah, I think it's, it's important to let them know that, you're asking for information because you really want to help them. It's not about, it's really coming alongside them, and it's picking the time and place to have some of these conversations, Sean. As we have Thanksgiving coming up, that may not be the best time to have some of these conversations. The holidays can be stressful enough. You may not want to go into some of these conversations, but just letting them know that you love them, you care for them, and this is part of helping care for them as they age. And one of the first things that I would do in having the conversations with parents is to ask if they've got some basic estate planning documents in place. Do they have a will? Do they have a living will, a medical power of attorney, a durable power of attorney? And very simply, if they don't have these basic documents in place, I would help them find an attorney who can help them, because these are so important. And yes, there's a cost involved with using an attorney, but that cost is really going to be a small drop in the bucket compared to what happens if somebody dies without these documents in place. So it's really going to be an investment that'll save time and money down the road. If your parents do have the documents in place already, then you want to make sure that they're up to date and they reflect their current situation. Anybody on the Zoom today have parents who were divorced? Raise a hand or give a thumbs up.
Or speak up or use the chat. I would think that 60% of the people on the call have parents who are divorced.
Yeah. And I would bet so too. Amanda, thank you for raising your hand. Yeah. So can you think about a situation where maybe those documents didn't get updated after a divorce, and parents, maybe mom is still listed as dad's decision maker for medical decisions? That is probably not going to go well. So life has changed. Estate planning documents need to be changed as well. Another really important part of step 2 in talking about estate planning documents is getting your parents to check beneficiary designations on any retirement accounts that they have. So that might be an IRA or a 401k or a 403b. Also checking beneficiaries on life insurance policies, because that is really important, because anything that has a beneficiary designation passes outside of the will. So you've got to make sure, again, if there's been a divorce, did mom and dad go back and change that beneficiary designation after the divorce? You want to make sure money goes to the right people. And sadly, in the world that I live in with helping people with their money, there have been all too many stories of people forgetting to make those changes to beneficiary designations. So
Patty, we have a question. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Ms. Witherspoon is asking, does an attorney always need to be involved in documents? Are notaries not sufficient?
Wow, that's a really good question. I hesitate to use always and never. So does an attorney always need to be involved? Probably not. However, just like Sean, I could probably try to do some handiwork around the house without hiring a professional. Well, my results might be mixed. And frankly, I'll just tell y'all, my results would not be mixed. They would be terrible because I am not a handy person. So there are places that allow you to create documents on your own, but it's a matter of, do those documents end up complying with state law? An attorney is the way to make sure that every I has been dotted, T has been crossed, so that there are no problems later. So do you have to use an attorney? No, but there is going to be some more peace of mind in knowing if you have used one, that it's done correctly.
And I would just add that if if you're thinking that you would use like something online, some online legal form, and then have that notarized, you certainly could do that. But Patty's point is very well made, that, it has to comply with the state of Alabama. It doesn't matter. I mean, it can be a legal document, but it doesn't necessarily mean it complies and is legal in the state of Alabama. And that's where I would say, again, it's worth spending the money. Now, if you are over 62, you can get free legal help on things exactly like this through the area agencies on aging.
That's great, Sean. I did not know that. Thank you for telling me that. Well, another important part of this, as I talk about making sure if they do have documents that they reflect their current situation. If both parents are still living, it's very common, if they do have estate planning documents, for them to be named as each other's decision maker. That means that under the will, that the other spouse would be listed as the executor. Under the power of attorney, which the power of attorney just allows somebody to make legal and financial decisions for you. So it's common when you're married to name your spouse, but there may come a point as your parents age where they either don't want to do the work, or they may not be able to make those decisions because of health reasons or cognitive reasons. So again, just looking at the documents that they have, saying, did they fit the current situation, both from a family standpoint and from a cognitive standpoint, a health standpoint? Does it reflect what needs to happen? And if your parents have a medical power of attorney, you want to make sure that you're having some conversations with them about the type of health care that they want toward the end of life. If they're no longer able to speak for themselves, what do they want to happen? I know as I've worked with clients over the years, I've heard, some people say, I want any and all measures to be taken for me. I want to have every shot I can of living as long as possible. And then there are other people who say, no, I don't want that. I want to know I've got good quality of life, but I'm not interested so much in how long that life may be. I just want to know the days that I have are going to be good ones. So everybody's different in that regard. So having the conversations with your parents about what's important to them. And then last point I'll make on the power of attorney is that document is only in force while your parents are alive. So once they die, your ability to do any kind of legal or financial decision making is gone, and now that's up to the executor under the estate. So step 2 is to ask these estate planning questions. Make sure they've got those documents in order. Step 3 is to ask your parents where they keep important documents, and it could be important documents like the estate plan that we just talked about. It could be life insurance policies. It could be investment accounts, passwords, usernames for online accounts that they may have. You want to know before there's a crisis where to find this information so that you don't have to go and play detective, in the middle of a crisis. So, I think about scenarios where maybe a mom has fallen and broken a hip and it's right before the tax filing deadline. You want to know where to find that tax information so that you can help make sure that those taxes get filed on time. So it's really important. I would also encourage you, as part of going through where they keep important documents, is to sit with them and ask how they pay bills each month. You might have parents who are still writing checks and doing things by hand. You might be able to help them automate and make things a little simpler and easier for them, easier for you if you ever have to step in and make sure that those bills get paid. And sitting with someone while they're paying bills may also give you some idea of their cognitive health. There was a study that came out in the National Institute of Health in December of 2020 that said older adults showed problems making financial decisions 6 years. So 6 years before there was a diagnosis of dementia. So seeing a parent kind of struggle with paying bills or understanding some financial concepts might be an early indicator that there's some cognitive problems going on. And I think back to when I was sitting with my dad. He was paying a credit card bill and he paid the wrong amount. And I just thought it was weird at the time. I didn't know what to make of it. And then a few years later, there was that diagnosis of dementia that came about. So I've seen it in my own family. So step 3 is to make sure that you know where to find all of the important papers. They don't have to go through and show you necessarily what all those papers are, but just, do they keep them in a desk drawer? Do they keep them in a filing cabinet? You need to know where to be able to go and get that information.
Yeah, Patty, if you don't mind, I'll add to, in those important papers, if your parent was a veteran, you want to look for their DD 214. You want to ask them where that is so that you can apply for benefits possibly. And you want to find their marriage certificate because it will be impacted down the road when you look at financing of things.
Yeah, those are great points. Thank you, Sean. You know, along with knowing where to find important papers, you also want to know who the important professionals are that your parents use and how to get in touch with them. So I mentioned the example of somebody needing to get income taxes complete. Maybe if a mom fell and broke a hip, well, you need to know where her tax papers are at home. You also need to know who her accountant is and how to get in touch with the accountant, how to get in touch with the financial planner, how to get in touch with the attorney that they have. Just having this information on hand is really going to be so helpful so that you're not scrambling in an emergency and trying to reach out and find who these people are and how to get in touch with them. I also encourage people to get not only the contact information for financial and legal professionals, but also for medical professionals that your parents use. I remember sitting in the emergency room with my mom, and this was early in my process of caring for her, and having to fill out all of and as nurses, y'all know all these questions, you know, the list of what are the prescriptions she was taking, what were all of her health diagnoses, you know, who were all the doctors that she used. And I knew some of that information, but I did not know all of it. And so I remember sitting in the waiting room of the emergency room, texting my sisters, you know, and we're crowdsourcing, completing the profile on our mom. You know, well, I remember this medication. Another sister remembers this one. So rather than you having that experience, I would just encourage you to gather that information ahead of time. You know, find out who all those specialists are, whether it's a dermatologist or an oncologist or whatever all the specialists are, you know who they are, know their contact information, know the prescriptions, know the medical information for your parent. That's really going to save you some stress down the road and allow your parents to get better care and treatment.
Yeah, I'm sorry to keep tagging on,
but go right ahead.
Icons bring to mind that it would be a good time because there are many now people who are aging, you know, and over 62 who do use, say, internet banking, or they have a Merrill Lynch account. So in addition to knowing who they bank with and who, you know, their Merrill Lynch representative is, or Bridgeworth in this case, you need to know their passwords. Because if they die, you can't get in. And then even their challenge words, if there's such a thing. And that's not only true for your parents, that's true for your spouse or your adult children, if that's the case.
Thank you, Sean. You're right. I mean, we do so much of our life online now. And so having a place, a secure place to list those usernames and passwords. And I know my dad had a list of usernames and passwords. But what I realized was that his handwriting had gotten so shaky that I couldn't make it out, you know, so I was having to go create my own list of those usernames and passwords.
We have a vendor who does this. You pay, I think it's like $8 a month or something, and you store all your passwords on this one site. And they update when you update them. And so always there, then you share that access with whomever you want.
I use a service called LastPass that does exactly that. There's also 1Password, I think. So there's a number of different options there that would be helpful for the people listening in today, as well as for the aging parents to help get that information.
Right.
All right, so step 5 is to know in Alabama, when we look at the clock and look at the calendar, we know it's football season here in Alabama. And whether you're cheering for the Alabama Crimson Tide or for Auburn, we know that those football teams don't just, fall into wins. It takes planning, it takes action. And so they've got to do some work ahead of time. And the same comes with your parents' financial situation. You can't just kind of cross your fingers and hope that your parents are going to be financially secure. You need to ask some questions, and you need to get some information about where they are financially so that you can understand, are they likely to be able to take care of themselves as long as they live, or might you need to step in and provide some financial support or find some other resources that can help them if they don't have the income and the assets to do so. I realize this is can be an uncomfortable conversation, but you might say, hey, mom and dad, I'm working on getting my financial house in order. What have you done? Have you ever worked with a financial planner or an investment advisor? Have you crunched your own numbers to see kind of where you are? So just asking those questions, because if you need to step in and provide some support, it sure would be nice to know that sooner rather than later. So step 5 is to ask questions about where they are now financially and their likelihood to remain financially independent. All right, y'all remember when I asked at the beginning about the shower, right? And we talked about some of the things that we're thinking about in the shower. So Sean, you're praying. I'm thinking about my to-do list. Somebody else is thinking about what do we get for Thanksgiving? What needs to be on my grocery list? There was somebody.
We had a couple of others. We had one that was thinking about what her kids needed for the weekend.
Uh-huh.
And then one of us was worrying about scraping her window this morning.
I'm sorry, what was that last part? One was
she was worried about scraping her window because of the frost.
Yes.
On the windshield this morning.
You got to have extra time to get going in the morning when you got to go out and scrape the windshield. Yes, there was one person I remember, Sean, who said that they were worried about falling in the shower. And I mean, so I would think that probably all the rest of us didn't have that thought, but there was one who had that thought. And that's why I'm bringing it up today, is to not so much from the standpoint of those who are in the audience and their likelihood to need help in the shower, but what happens when your parents need help in the shower, or need help going to the bathroom, or need help getting dressed or getting food. Having those kind of conversations about what they want to happen when they may not be able to do some of these things on their own. A lot of the people that I work with say, if I need some help, I want to get that help at home. I want to stay in my home, and okay, great, that's fine. But there may be some changes that need to be made. There may be some modifications that need to be made to the home to make it safer, or maybe they need to move to get closer to family. That was true with my mom and dad. They lived in Tuscaloosa. And as their health began declining, I was the daughter who was physically closest to them. So I was going to Tuscaloosa more and more often, which isn't a terrible drive, but it is when you're going regularly and you're working and you're taking care of kids. So my parents made the hard call to sell their home of more than 40 years and move to Birmingham. And I think back to step 1 of having perspective. That was a very hard decision for them to make, to leave their home of more than 40 years. One, I was thankful that they made, because it allowed me to be more involved and to see them more often. So I was thankful for it, but it didn't mean that it was easy. So if parents say they want to stay at home, that's probably going to lead to some more conversations about, well, is it the same home that they're in now? Might it need to be a different home? What kind of resources may need to be brought in? And Sean, I know you are way more knowledgeable about the cost of home care than I am. I think in general, it's about $20 an hour. Is that right?
It was pre-COVID. Now it's usually at least 25, sometimes over 27.
Wow.
That's for non-medical. Medical, 100 an hour, or 55 around the clock.
Wow. Okay. Wow. I'll have to update my numbers. Thank you for telling me that. I mean, just using a low number of $20 an hour, you think, well, that's not bad, right? To bring in somebody to help mom and dad get a shower and, kind of get dressed and give them some stimulation and help them with meals a few times a week. That's not terrible. But when you do the math and you turn that $20 an hour into care for 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, that turns into $175,000. And Sean, what I'm hearing from you is that number is even low because the cost has gone up.
Yeah, up that number by 20%.
Wow. Wow. Well, your parents might have some long-term care insurance that could help cover some of those costs. So that's another piece of information to ask as you're asking where they keep their important documents. Ask if they've got a long-term care insurance policy. And if they do, what those benefits are and how long those benefits last. So you'll know what resources may be available to pay for it. And Sean, I know this is another point you were the expert in. I can just share my personal experience that I feel strongly if you've got a parent who is looking at moving into a retirement community, to look for one that offers all levels of care, meaning that it's got independent living and assisted living and memory care and skilled nursing, so that if a change needs to be made, they can stay in the same community and not have to make a move. I know that that's not maybe the answer for everybody, but I think there's a lot of value in being able to stay put if you can and not have to make a change if health needs are become even more.
It's very important. It's unfortunately in Alabama, it's all too rare, like so many other important things. So, I mean, you have, maybe 6 or 7 options in the Birmingham metro area for that, but you get to Huntsville, I think you've got 2, and none really anywhere else. Well, none in Montgomery.
Wow, I did not know that.
One in Montgomery, excuse me, one in Montgomery.
Okay. And you're saying, Sean, that like there's 6 places in Birmingham that offer all levels of care, maybe 2 in Huntsville. Okay. So there's more communities than that. It's just there are very few that offer all levels of care.
Right. And they generally in other states are priced differently. So they're much more expensive in other states. That's the one thing that's good here.
Okay. Okay. That's awesome. I love when I get to learn along the way. Thank you, Sean, for that. That's important.
Sure.
Well, parents may not want to have these conversations about what happens if they need help in the shower. They may kind of put their feet down and say, I'm not leaving this house. I'm going to stay put. And going back to that book, How to Say It to Seniors, one of the pieces of advice it gave was to say, okay, mom, dad, I hear you. I hear that you want to stay here, but I also need to hear from you your plans for how you can do so safely and how you're going to get the help that you need. So really putting the question back on them, asking them to share, their ideas for managing the situation. Sean, do you have any tips along those lines for, when parents are maybe not wanting to be cooperative?
Well, it depends. If they have a cognitive dysfunction and they're not cooperative, then that would be one thing.
Yeah.
If they were not cooperative in the sense of not wanting to move, then I would ask them to just visit a place with me and have lunch and see if it is what they think it is. If you could get them that far. But I think that your approach in terms of getting the documentation was perfect. Here's what I'm thinking of doing. What do you think? Now, if you're old enough, as some folks are, and I think in some cases I am old enough at 55 to consider moving in a place, you could even take that tack with your parents. Hey, I want to go look at this for myself. What do you think? You want to go and check it out?
Yeah. Yeah. It's another example when you say that of coming alongside your parent, not forcing them, but like, let's do this together. Let's check it out together.
Right. And I think you've got the right, and that's the approach I've always taught is you come to your parents in the natural role that exists, which is you are the child.
Yeah.
And you do not tell your father or mother what to do. You did not do it when you were 3. Now that you're 53, you still don't do it. You ask for what you need. And if you are like most children, you know your parents well enough to know which buttons to push to get what you want. So you use that tactic.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I don't remember if this came from the How to Say It to Seniors book or another resource, but it talked about most parents still want to be parents and they want
Right.
to do what they can to care for their children. So yes, absolutely. Well, all right. So if I can get everybody's permission, we're going to make a stop at Sadness Circle for just a few minutes. And we're going to talk about funeral planning, and we're going to talk about it because it's really important. It is very hard to plan a funeral to honor your parents if you don't know what it is they want. And you know, this is an area where I dropped the ball with my mom and my dad, and I want to share that with you so to keep others from making the same mistake. I just could not bring myself to talk to my parents about funeral planning and to ask what they had done or wanted to have done. So I remember my mom died first, and I remember sitting in the funeral director's office with my dad and my two sisters, and we were there over 2 hours making decisions. And I just had no idea all of the decisions that had to be made. I didn't know there were so many choices for not only the outside of a casket, but the inside of a casket. And not to mention, you know, making decisions about songs and flowers. I mean, it was just one thing after another, and we're all in a fog. So it was difficult to make those decisions. So mom died in February of 2018, and I still didn't bring this up with my dad. And then dad died in February of 2021. And I really thought my sisters and I had an easy button. We went back to the same funeral home that we had used for mom and just said, let's do the same thing, same plan that we used for mom. Let's just duplicate it, except we are not going to plan on any kind of service in a chapel, because in February of 2021, we were all still very worried about COVID. And so we were just going to do a graveside service. My jaw hit the ground when the funeral director came back with a price that was thousands of dollars more than the price we had paid for my mom's service only 2 years before. And I asked the man, I said, I know what we paid for my mom. Like, how on earth are we doing less and spending more? And this funeral director said, well, give me a minute. And he left his office to go talk to his manager and came back several minutes later and lowered the price. And it left such a bad taste in my mouth. It was just such an example of how easily we could have been taken advantage of under that situation. So I know talking about funeral planning is uncomfortable, but it really is one of those ways that's going to save you some time and money if you go ahead and do it now, and to encourage your parents to do some pre-planning, because if they were to make these decisions, if they were to go ahead and pay the cost, it's probably going to be less than if that has to be done several years from now at the time they actually die.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that was very personal to you. And I was in the same boat. We had to plan my stepdad's funeral, and we didn't know what to do. And you know, the thing that you bring up though that's important also about, and maybe the way to get your parents interested in funeral planning, if they're interested in Medicaid, is to say, we need to do this for Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
Because Medicaid allows you to do some portion of that expense. The funeral itself, basically not the digging of the holes.
Yeah.
For, but I mean, that's a good way to use your expenses.
Yeah. It is just really a way to take care of the family by going ahead and making sure those decisions are made sooner rather than later. As hard as it is to talk about funeral planning, I don't know what was worse, funeral planning or conversation about driving. But step 8 is to have conversations with your parents, ideally while they are still healthy and cognitively sharp, about driving, and to get their input on, you know, what are the reasons that they might be willing to give up their car keys down the road. Would they do that if there was a medical diagnosis that the doctor gave them and the doctor said, hey, you don't need to drive anymore? Or would they stop driving if they got lost going somewhere that maybe they've driven hundreds of times before? Or would they stop driving because they've had an accident and it was their fault? What would be the reasons that they would give up their car keys? And like the funeral planning, this is not a fun subject, but it's important, and it's one that from a protection standpoint needs to happen. If your parents are driving and they've got a cognitive impairment, insurance may still cover them if they have an accident. But we live in an area where we see so many plaintiff attorneys who advertise their services, and they would be happy to take the case against your mom or your dad who's had an accident when they were driving and had a cognitive problem. Maybe there's been a diagnosis of dementia. So the car insurance might cover the claim, but then you may have attorneys who are coming after everything else that your parents have. So as uncomfortable as it is to have some of these conversations, you really need to do so in order to protect your parents' financial situation. Hey, Sean, do you know, I know at one point in time, UAB offered a driving assessment for seniors, but I don't know if they still have that. I've not been able to find any information about that online. And I wondered if
They
it's still
do.
exists.
It's through their geriatric department, I believe, not the clinic, but the department, which is different. And I used to be on their board many years ago, but they still offer it. And also I found out, so does the AARP.
Okay.
I think no, maybe it's AAA. It's one of the A's, either AAA or AARP.
Yeah.
If you called your local office, they would have possibly a driving test. And what generally happens in all of these driving tests, whether it's UABs or the other, which I don't think you really pay much, if anything, for, is that most folks don't pass the written.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't even get to the driving. And I think that's what people kind of sweat.
Yeah.
But the mom can fake it through that course. Well, she probably won't even get to drive,
Yeah. Well, know that there are resources. I'm glad to know that the UAB one is still out there.
Oh, Ashley
The
Tolbert.
resources.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Patty. I was surprised, but Ashley so quickly found the AARP Driver Safety Program. It's at aarp.org or 888-227-7669.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. That's great. It's nice to know there are some resources out there. If you don't want to be the one making these hard calls about when does mom or dad need to stop driving, that you've got some other resources that can help.
And some people will ask their physicians, but I found that physicians tend not to want to do this.
Yeah. Yes. That was my experience. So it was left to me and my sisters, and that was very unpleasant. So looking for other people. And
Right.
that takes us to step 9, which is to know that it's going to take a village to care for your aging parents. Just like it takes a village when you're raising kids, it's going to take a village to care for your aging parents. So who is in your village? Who are the people that can come alongside you? Maybe it's Sean with the work that he does and helping people get care at home or care in a community. Maybe it's different physicians that are going to be there. Maybe it's close friends, who can step in and help take care of you, when you are focused so much on caring for your aging parents. But this is an area where there's a lot going on. And you need to know that you're not alone and that you've got people who come alongside you and help. So Sean, I know I've been so impressed over the years with all of the resources that you offer through CarePatrol, and also about all the resources that you know about in our community. So I would defer to you as the expert on what all is out there. You mentioned UAB earlier. Certainly UAB and their geriatrics department, with their specialty on geriatrics, that may be part of the people that you want in your village.
And there's an uptick now, Patty, you may have seen this, in concierge physicians.
Yes.
And which in many cases is not affordable, but now they're sort of concierge physicians who bill Medicare or whatever private insurance and come to your home. And there's really, that's going to proliferate. We're going to see more and more and
Yeah.
more of that the next year or two. And I think that would be, if you had that option, and some of them, like I know of one particular that we've worked with locally, so some of them have worked with aging folks before, and it may
Yeah.
be entire practice, in fact.
That is great. I know that can offer a lot of value to the family to have that as a resource too, just because then if you've got that kind of relationship, you can reach out to that physician. You're more likely to get a phone call or an email back quickly, you know, if there is a medical problem going on.
Yeah, and the beauty of those things is and I don't mean to disparage physicians, but it's not physicians, it's physician assistants and nurse practitioners who I've found to be a little bit better about returning phone calls.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of empathy for our medical professionals. They're dealing with a lot, so they got a lot on their plate.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Step 10 is to enjoy the journey with your parents, to know that it's not going to last forever. You know, just this stage of life is going to go by in a blink. You know, so take the time to have conversations with your parents about these different steps that we've discussed. The picture that I've got on the screen is from a trip my sisters and I took with our dad after mom died. And that was one of those wins that I'm so thankful that we did, and would encourage anybody who's listening in today to do that as well, to be able to have that extended quality time with your parents. Having those trips allowed us to have time for some of these conversations. We made a lot of great memories and had a lot of fun. So enjoy the journey. This time in life is not going to last forever. All right. Are there other questions that?
Well, I expect, and maybe I'm overthinking, but I'm guessing that there are people listening who are caring for a parent or maybe a neighbor or an aunt or uncle who have experienced some of these issues. And I wonder if any of you who've had that experience or having that experience may have anything to add to what we've already discussed today in terms of maybe how you've approached your parents or what documents and other information you've sought from them, or if or how you've done funeral planning or taken the keys or anything like that. We'd love to hear from you, love to have you share with everyone and enrich us all. Does anyone have anything to add in the chat room or unmuting your mic? Patty, I think it's Friday.
Yeah.
And it may be like, so I've gotten to the point, y'all. Oh, here's Miss Dean. I am dealing with this now with my mother. She has a power of attorney, LWAT, living will, and written her own obituary. Yay.
Wow.
Your mom sounds like a tour de force, Miss Dean.
Yeah.
Written her own obituary.
Wow.
That's terrific. And that's interesting. A friend of mine, a close friend of mine from my elementary school, his father died and he wrote part of his obituary, which they filled in. So neat.
Mm-hmm.
Miss Carpenter says we had the highway patrol call my mother-in-law in for a license retest. That's interesting. I didn't know they would do that.
I didn't know that either. Huh, good to know.
Oh, as Dean continued, she's giving me her hiding spots for the documents and written up her passwords, last will and testament, LWAT. I had not seen that before. Thank you. Ms. Stewart says, just FYI, there is a new day program in Montevallo called Best Days at the Elder Justice Center. Caregiver breaks are so important. Thank you, Amanda. That's so right. And we've talked about Adult Day, and we'll talk about it on December 2nd when we produce levels of care for y'all. Our December calendar is complete. We'll post it soon. On Monday, we have vicarious and secondary trauma in clinicians with David Kilmer, who's a licensed social work counselor. And then for the rest of the month, then the following Monday, we'll have Dr. Daniel Dees, who will present pearls for Hodgkin's disease. Now, Dr. Dees is a UAB neurologist. We're hoping that we have a large turnout for him, and particularly because his teaching is integral and needed for any of you who are in long-term care. In fact, it's designed for you. So I hope you'll join us again. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you again, Patti, for, I thought was just a wonderful, wonderful presentation. And I'm so grateful to you for sharing your time and information with us.
Thank you, Sean. My pleasure.
Oh, the password, y'all. It is 12:55. The password is Bridgeworth. You can see it on the screen here. It is Patti's employer. And it's a capital B as in boy with all lowercase letters afterward. Bridgeworth, BRIDGEWORTH. Bridgeworth. Oh, and Ms. Dean says one more thing. Legal services are available for military dependents. It's free. Amanda Stewart says, thanks, Patti. Here is her QR code. I've pasted again the Survey Monkey link, and now I'm putting into the chat room the password, which is Bridgeworth with a capital B. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Patti. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I hope to see you Monday. If not, have a terrific Thanksgiving. And I thank you and thank God for all of you.